I think the biggest motivation is that people feel inspired to want to support the people that are feeding the planet, right? Like it's, I think the center point that we connect people on is something very fundamental, which is our sustenance, right? And so I think that, our donors really connect with that.
You're listening to Relish This, the Purpose Marketing Podcast. Here's your host, Stu Swineford.
Hey everybody, Stu here. My guest today on Relish This is Sherry Manning, and she is the Executive Director of Global Seed Savers, which is a really cool organization that helps farmers save out a certain amount of their seeds so that they can plant again the following year. They do most of their work in the Philippines and have a Philippines unit as well that does a lot of great work over there. And they're doing some really cool stuff kind of all throughout the engagement lifecycle. So we had a really cool conversation, and two things that came out of it were, the first was really being able to help focus your organization on profits. And even though we are nonprofits, when we run events and things of that nature, we really do need to be focused on the costs versus the net revenue that's generated from those endeavors. And the other thing that we talked quite a bit about was persona development and understanding how to take what's working and develop a persona around that and then be able to do more of what's working. So it was a really fun episode. I think you're going to enjoy it. Lots of fun things to talk about. And here we go. Hey, Sherry, how are you doing today?
I am good, Stu. How are you doing?
I am doing really well. It's a beautiful day up here in the high country today. We got another 12 inches or so of snow, but it's melting off really quickly. So that's nice.
Yeah, it's mud season for sure. So
Indeed. I've sent out several emails today where I talk about how much my muck boots are getting a workout right now. So it's part of living in Colorado.
That's right. We love it.
Indeed. So tell me a little bit about what you guys have going on at the Global Seed Savers organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are Global Seed Savers is an international nonprofit organization. We're based here in Denver, Colorado, out of the Posner Center for International Development, but our primary operations are on the ground in the Philippines. And
oh, wow.
We work with smallholder farmers and farming communities there, helping restore the traditional practice of saving seeds and restoring local food systems. So I'm happy to dive into more details, but we're all about restoring food and seed sovereignty and really working from the grassroots up to ensure communities have the local resources they need to sustain themselves.
Ah, that's great. I know that there are some interesting challenges with that here in the States. Is that why it's a Philippines-based organization, or do you have touch points here stateside as well?
We do have some domestic partnerships here in the United States. We work with an organization called the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance, which does a lot of seed education and training throughout the Rocky Mountain West. But my work in the Philippines, and the reason that's where we're based, started over 15 years ago when I served as a Peace Corps volunteer there. Back when you didn't get to pick where you go. So I like to say that the Philippines chose me. And it's really my time there as a volunteer, learning and listening and living with my host family at the time that kind of spurred the creation of what's now Global Seed Savers. Wow,
that's great. So you work with farmers there in the Philippines to help them, kind of get their current crop harvested and then save for future crops. Is that part of your program?
Yeah. So we really do we come in with an education program. So we do a series of different trainings. Our core curriculum is a program called Seed School, where we're teaching, we're facilitating, and by we, I mean our farmers, our staff in the Philippines are training other community members in this historic practice of saving seeds. And so,
right.
for your listeners who don't know gardening or don't know seeds, this how we got our food diversity or our past food diversity is literally by saving seeds. Seeds are meant to be crops are meant to be planted and then a portion of them saved and grown to seed and then replanted again. But really just in the last 30 to 40 years, as multinational chemical corporations have taken control of our food systems, the practice and the art of saving seeds is being lost. And in particular in growing populations like the Philippines. And so
Right.
We're really coming in, working side by side with the community to help restore those traditions. So we do our technical training program, and then depending on the needs of the community, we'll work with those farmers to do seed trials where they're, in the field, dedicating a portion of their land for seed production, and then
Okay.
helping them establish seed libraries in those
Oh,
communities.
okay, great. And our
Yeah.
individual, this is fueling my own curiosity here, but are individual farmers doing the seed storage themselves, or are there repositories, or how does that work?
Yeah. So we kind of do a little bit of both. A big part of what we encourage is helping the on-farm seed storage, because that's
Okay.
a huge important piece of it. And then we're also helping communities establish local seed libraries. So these are not the Svalbard seed vault up in Norway. These are
Right.
literally small cabinets in proper storage containers where all of our partner communities bring a portion of their seeds so that the rest of the community and their other farmers can share and exchange those seeds as well.
Yeah, because there's a
Um,
lot of diversification that goes on with mixing of seed
yeah,
stocks.
yes. And you want that. I mean, the
Mhm.
thing that you want is that diversity. I mean, I think we know that in many aspects of our world, but in particular in agriculture, you want diversity. You don't want monocrop.
Right.
You're way more prone to disease, to pests, to the impacts of a pandemic, to the impacts of climate change, unless you have diversity. So
Well,
we're
that's pretty cool.
yeah. It's a simple solution that we've overcomplicated in our modern world. And so, I think something I always like to say is in this sector, in the nonprofit world, people like to talk a lot about innovation and doing the next big thing. And we take a lot of pride in that we're helping return and restore, old traditions, because
Yeah,
that's what really works.
it's getting back to basics and
Yep.
really leaning back on those things that have been proven to work for generations.
Absolutely.
Well, that's really cool. So, in terms of your organization, where do you feel like you land in terms of your maturity in the kind of building awareness and bringing in donors and do you work with volunteers?
No, it's a good question, and we're actually at a pretty exciting tipping point in our life cycle right now. I would say that we are primed and ready, and have moved over the last few years from a scrappy startup to a more established adolescent nonprofit. So we do have two full-time paid staff members in the Filipinos, that run our programs and operations on the ground. I'm the only U.S. staff member. And then we're really getting ready to grow. We're planning to bring on 2 new team members in the Philippines. And, I think for us, we do have volunteers here and there in terms of helping with events and different things here in the U.S. But the core of our people that really make the work happen are on the ground in the Philippines.
That's great. What's fueling that ability to grow the staff and expand your mission?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's many things. I think that we over the years have really honed in on exactly kind of what our value add in this big ecosystem of sustainable ag, regenerative ag, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of different words floating around the world right now,
Yeah.
and I think that in particular, Stu, the pandemic in the last 14 months, 15 months, whatever we're at now, has really reawakened the need for these local systems. And in a country like the Philippines, that's only been even more exacerbated with the other challenges that were already existing there. It's a land of 7,000 islands. Food supply chains were cut off very quickly. You already had densely populated urban areas that struggled with food insecurity, and the pandemic only exacerbated that. And so communities are really saying, hey, we need to go back to these local systems. We're kind of being cut off from each other and from the world, and we want to engage and do this ourselves. And so really, I think the pandemic, we were just primed and ready. We already kind of had some momentum. We'd run programs in different regions of the country. We had our 2 staff members on the ground already, and we've now just been able to respond to that. And, obviously we're grateful for all of our supporters and donors and, continuing to build on that. But
right.
The timing all came together in a positive way.
Yeah, well, it's great that you were primed and ready for that. I think that there are a lot of organizations out there who had the knowledge and the capability to bring valuable assets or information or assistance to these areas that were really, really hit hard in the last year and a half. But they weren't able to take action on that based upon their revenue streams or other mechanisms that they just couldn't put in play based upon cash flow. So it's great to hear that you were able to kind of pounce on that opportunity.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that's helped, and I'm continuing to work on not having a scarcity mentality. Being the founder and being from the bottom up, it's amazing to kind of sit back and see where we are now. But I think one of the benefits that we were placed in, as an organization, is we were pretty small and lean as it was. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of nonprofits, a lot of my colleagues at the Posner Center really had to take a hard look at their budget when COVID first hit and make some hard decisions. But we've been pretty lean from the get-go. And so we were kind of able to just ride it out. And we had to put a pause on a lot of direct programming in the field because of travel restrictions.
Right.
But we didn't have a lot of wiggle room in the budget in the first place. And so it put us in a position of being able to kind of dig in and maintain all of our staff. That's something I'm really proud of. We were able to keep all of our team, keep paying them. And now we're, the pandemic's a very different situation in the Philippines currently, but, we're kind of coming out of some of this, and we're able to respond to the growing need. So,
oh, that's great. Yeah. So what are some of the things that are on your growth agenda in terms of really helping to be able to expand that mission or reach more people, to help them with not only teeing up their ability to handle these kinds of challenges in the future, but just to expand that mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're really excited about, we're just in early conversations about some of these kind of program model changes, but something that we really want to do is we want to be Global Seed Savers and Global Seed Savers Philippines want to be kind of the hub, the center point that's building a coalition of all of these community partners, farmers, other nonprofits that want to engage in this work. And so, we're excited about building out that membership model. So, a farmers organization, a local government unit, another organization that wants to partner with us can become a member of Global Seed Savers Philippines. They'll pay into that. And then with that, they'll get kind of a menu of our options. They'll get access to online seed school. They'll get access to gatherings of other members of the community to learn from them. And so, I think as the demand for what we're providing is growing, we want to continue to think about how to do it smarter, not harder, and to really have Global Seed Savers be the center point of making all of these connections for these communities doing this work.
Right. What kind of outreach are you doing now to kind of explain that new positioning and get people on board?
Yeah. We're kind of in the internal conversations right now about that. But we have a number of partners that we're constantly in communication with and working with. We're kind of building out that internal membership model at the moment. But I think, almost every day myself or my colleague in the Philippines, our executive director there, gets requests, gets emails from a school who wants local seeds for their school garden, from, a farmers organization that wants access to our seed school programs. And so we want to be able to not just respond to those kind of in a one-off way, but say, hey, we'd love for you to engage. Here's how to do it in a formal way.
Right.
So
Right.
I think the other thing that we've seen, Stu, is just with the pandemic and kind of the rise of everyone in the Philippines being more engaged with farming, be that urban folk or rural communities. Our hits on social media, our social presence has really increased in the Philippines.
Oh, great.
Which is super exciting. We're actually getting ready to bring on a local marketing and communications staff member to run those things for us, to really make sure that the voice, the voice of the audience that's being reached. I mean, we have our donor audience here, but that we're really having that Philippine voice share the perspective of our work and what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And what's fortunate is that the cost associated with bringing someone on over in the Philippines is a lot lower than over here. And you can get some really great people in that area for a lot less money than here domestically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and the authenticity piece, I think, is fantastic to hear as well. It sounds like you don't have what we would call an attraction problem. You have a steady influx of inquiries and people who are engaging with your brand. And then moving on to that connect phase, it sounds like you're collecting email addresses, you're building a community. Is that accurate? Are you doing things with all of these touch points that you have?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we have a newsletter list. We have our growing social feed, and we're keeping a running tally of all these things. I mean, honestly, Stu, it's kind of an abundance of desire at the moment,
right.
and us wanting to position ourselves and make sure that we are not overtaxing our small but mighty team in responding to all of these needs. And so, we're really spending the next month or so doing a lot of this internal work, bringing on more team members, bringing on more folks, and then we're going to be able to hit the ground running and continue to respond to the needs. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. One of the things that we've seen work really well when you mentioned a newsletter, and I think newsletters are a great part of any organization's kind of general outreach. One of the things that we've seen starting to work really well for our clients and for us actually as an organization, my real job is as a digital marketing agency
Right.
co-founder. And what we have started doing is really paring those emails down to one specific piece of information or one specific value driving component, as opposed to just throwing a bunch of stuff out there for people to kind of choose their own adventure. So when people send out newsletters, they tend to have, the 3 latest blog posts and this other thing that we did and this event that went really well and some other thing and like 2 or 3 calls to action, and people can get a little lost in that messaging. And it also feels really impersonal because people can spot a newsletter, 3,000 miles away, right?
Yep.
Where there's an opportunity with your email list, people on that list have raised their hand. So they've taken an action to get on that list. And so providing more frequent, more specific elements or items of value to that list can be really effective because it does feel so personal. So if you strip out all that design and you strip out all that kind of, like I said, choose your own adventure sort of messaging, and really deliver a single piece of valuable material or insight or information that feels like it could have been written to a specific person, I think that you would see how you start to get better engagement because people feel like they're being talked to as a person and not just a list.
Yeah, no, that's great. And thanks for sharing that tidbit and knowledge with us. That's great. We've actually we're kind of on a bit of a pause right now from some of our communications in that way, because we're in this rebuilding and kind of re-envisioning how we want to go about sharing those messages. But I love that you shared that. And something we we did a better job of going into last year was we kind of peppered a monthly newsletter that every other month was then a blog, and it was more of a personal story from one of our staff members or getting permission from one of our farmers to share one of their stories. Because again, I agree with you. It's that personal connection. And I think especially now we've kind of all adjusted to this digital connection, but we still need that human connection, that personal connection. And we need good stories right now in the world. Right. And so it's I love that tip, and I'll make a note of that and share that with our new marketing person when we bring her on.
Oh, great. Yeah. One of the things that we've seen work really well is to actually just take those blog posts, and instead of putting, a synopsis of three posts in a newsletter, just go ahead and send each of those posts out individually. Have a greeting that says, Hey, Stu. And then just go right into the blog post.
Yep.
And yes, I could have gotten that if I'd gone to the site, but you do have this kind of captive audience that is engaged. They've asked to be, corresponded with, so they're more likely to see that. And then having just a single call to action, if there even is one. And I would kind of mix things up and have it be that you're not always asking people for donations or action, but really giving them the opportunity to engage with your organization in a variety of different ways. It can be really effective.
Absolutely. Yep. That's great.
In terms of your social media, how frequently and what's your approach to social?
Yeah. I think that again, it's not like we've found our unicorn, but I'm very excited that we're bringing on a specific dedicated team member to help run these aspects of our work. Because I do think we've reached that stage as an organization where we need a committed team member that's managing this. So, we mainly have a presence on Facebook and Instagram. We do have a Twitter account, but we don't really post there a whole lot. I would say that we post 3 to 4 times a week.
Okay.
And it's really a range, and we're kind of in the process right now of thinking through more of a schedule. How are we tying that into our bigger communication strategy? A lot of what we've started to do recently, as more and more of our partners in the Philippines are becoming more active on social, is it's sharing a lot of content of like-minded organizations, right? We have some wonderful partners that we've held seed schools with, that we've worked in their communities, and they're starting to build their own social presence. And so we always like to post their stories and share their articles. And then obviously, sharing stories of the field, sharing, if we have a training that's happened, we'll post about that. We'll post articles of interest. But I've been having fun just as someone that currently is still kind of the one posting things. I'm very excited to pass that off. But it's been super fun, Stu, to see more and more of our partners start to share content and start to develop their social platform. And so again, kind of in this spirit of us as Global Seed Savers wanting to be the coalition builder, we don't need to spend the time making all the content. We can share the quality content from our friends. And that's a great way to spread the network and to share the same messaging,
Yeah, I love that you've figured that out. I'm not the only person that's come up with this idea. And in fact, it would be disingenuous of me to claim that ownership of this, but it's this idea of being a maven. And you don't have to have created all of the thought leadership. You just know how to have to know how to access it.
Yep.
And people will remember that, and they'll remember that you helped them get some valuable information. And it doesn't have to be always something that you sat down and spent 12 weeks researching and writing and delivering. Just knowing that something is important and being able to share that and maybe add a little, add your 2 cents of why you think it's important,
right?
To provide validation, but really, we don't always have to be in that content creation mode. We can just be in that content distribution mode, particularly if we are adding a little bit of flavor to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, for that, that really ties in with our model, right? Like we as an organization want to be able to come in and help provide, help support, help help encourage. But our long-term vision is that the communities where we establish these seed libraries, where we do these trainings, that they're locally led, right? That the farmers in that community, whatever the structure is, we come in and bring some value add, and then we're able to walk away, right? And so I think that that's kind of in the same spirit when you talk about sharing quality content. It's like, don't think that you're the only one that can create good thought. There's a lot of good thought out there, and what a better opportunity to share that and get those cross pollination happening with other like-minded organizations.
Yeah, for sure. That's what we would kind of consider to be. It's a little bit of a blend between the inspire phase and the bond phase, but essentially, not everyone is going to be ready to take an action on day one. And so just providing them valuable information that feels genuine and is, really comes from this position of altruism and the idea that you just want to help. People pick up on that. And then when they are ready to take action and really move into that engagement cycle, you'll be top of mind.
Yep, absolutely.
And then I think I heard that you're doing a lot of kind of back and forth in social as well, where you're reaching out to other organizations and responding to people, et cetera. That's something that we see a lot of people miss with social media, is that they tend to use it as sort of this soapbox as opposed to, being a relationship builder. So I think I heard that you're out, engaging with other organizations and answering people who post to your platform as well.
Yeah, no, we definitely are. And again, as we're bringing on more team members to work with this process, we're excited to maybe even, initiate some of our own back and forth communication with those audiences. So, how can we send out a poll, or how can we, whatever, surveys are very archaic and rooted in all sorts of bad structures. But, I think how can we help create that for our folks as well? And so, yeah. And again, I think, we're just excited to be able to bring on more team members to help inspire and focus on that process,
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times it's just listening, just asking questions and listening for the answers that you get. And I think that's something that's really, it tends to be a little bit missing from social media at times, is people feel like they're always the expert, and really it's just a matter of starting a conversation and building that relationship through back and forth interactions.
Yep, absolutely.
What is your donor structure? Is it typically coming from stateside donations, or is there a good donor base in the Philippines as well?
Yeah, we're starting to grow a donor base locally. That's actually a big strategic initiative for us in the Philippines, is growing that local donor base and really honing in on our programmatic revenue streams. But currently, we're still, 90+% funded here in the West. We're still primarily individual donor funded. We do have a grants portfolio that's growing, but grants are a tricky world, and we're grateful for all of our grant funders, but also really wanting to move into this more consistent, long-term, multi-year funding. And we actually just secured our first ever multi-year individual donor gift. It's a game changer for us. It's a transformational gift over the next 4 years, which is just amazing. And we're very, very grateful to that donor. And I think for us, it's a sign that the time that we've put into relationships is leading to the right thing. And we hope that that's going to turn into more of those types of relationships to help really complement the on the ground revenue generation and on the ground kind of fundraising that's starting to happen.
Yeah, that's a great topic of conversation. Certainly attempting to move people from just one-time donations to more predictable commitments over a period of time, even if those are smaller individual donations. So for example, just getting a bunch of people on a $10 a month,
right?
A lot of times that's an easier sell than trying to get somebody to give, $120 today. So really attempting to escalate that engagement is something that can be really super effective for your organization because it does build predictability. It creates that, that budgetable against cash flow
Yep.
that we're all, so in need of. And in the nonprofit space, there tend to be, the big time of year it tends to be in at the end of the year,
Yep.
during Thanksgiving and holiday season giving, as well as just people trying to fulfill an end of year kind of commitment that they've made and they've waited to the last minute. So certainly, that is not going to go away. But even during those times, attempting to get people to commit to longer term, month over month, regular donations, getting that transition can really be a game changer for a nonprofit, because it enables you to, like I said, when you have people who've raised their hands, so certainly someone who's said, yes, put me on your email list, that's a hand raise. Somebody who said, I'd like to give to your organization, that's a little bit higher hand raise. And if you think of ways to escalate that engagement, to get them to get used to donating monthly, for example, then you can go back to those donors on a fairly regular basis and just ask for a little bit more commitment every month. Mm-hmm. And so it's just, it's a way to, to kind of escalate that. The other piece that I think a lot of nonprofits may discount or just miss is this idea of getting someone to escalate from an individual donor to a corporate donor. And so just letting people know that you're open to corporate, partnership arrangements or corporate donorship kind of agreements. A lot of corporations are out there trying to, do more good in the world. We have B Corps and everybody else kind of forming, and a lot of these organizations, particularly if they're in your space, are looking to do a little bit more to give back. And so it's a good opportunity to take an individual donor and put it, in their mind that they could go to their, their place of business or their company if they're, in a position to make those decisions, and have that company come on as a corporate sponsor.
Yeah. I think you just shared a lot of potential ways to go about it. I mean, those of us on the ground making those things happen, it isn't quite that simple. But it's I think again, It's all about relationships, right, Steve?
Yeah, exactly.
So for example, this very generous individual donor that's now given us this transformational gift over the next 4 years, I've spent a lot of time cultivating that relationship, right?
Yeah.
And there's just a good connection point, right? Like this person is very committed to our work, cares deeply about the mission. But again, it takes time. Like in the fundraising world, what do they say? It takes 18 months to like cultivate a new donor, which is like a pretty scary time crunch when you're operating in our current realities. But I think it is about putting in that time and putting in those relationships. And that is hard, it takes a lot of patience. But I think it's, we're sitting in this place of just tremendous gratitude and excitement that, combined with this transformational gift, there's also this continued groundswell for the work on the ground. And so, really hoping we can marry those two. And I think, the other thing that we've spent a lot of time building that base, right? Like building those small donors, building those monthly donors. Still would love to still have more monthly donors if anyone's inspired and wants to dive in that way. But I think the tipping point that we're at, or at least I see with our US donors, is we're going to want to maintain those folks. But now that we've received this type of multi-year, very substantial commitment, like that's where we can head now. Right?
Yeah.
Like that will hopefully be a door to more folks like that. And again, we're going to maintain our base. And, frankly, COVID has required a lot of small nonprofits to dig into that base. Right.
Yes.
And to, what are the relationships that you're going to maintain during a pandemic? It's people that already know and love you. And,
absolutely.
And that's what we've had to do, in addition to being at the place programmatically where some grant funding has also opened up. So, it's a timing thing, and every year is different. But we're rolling into this quarter two of this year feeling a little bit of breath, because we have some of this money in the bank to really give us the time to do this internal work so that we can respond when we're ready.
Yeah, it just takes the pressure off, right? When you have that predictability and that understanding that you're funded for at least a while. It lets you make different decisions.
Yep, absolutely.
So one of the things that's just really interesting, and it's endemic, or it's just kind of baked into the nonprofit world, is this challenge where when you're asking for donations, you have to be able to demonstrate and state your value proposition really strongly. And one of the things I love on your site is that you and your team have clearly done some of the hard work, establishing your values, your vision, and your mission. And I should have taken a peek at your donation page as well. I apologize. I didn't do that before our call or before our discussion here today. But one of the things that's really interesting about the nonprofit space is that there's constant friction as people kind of move up this mountain of engagement. And where in the for-profit world, it's more, there's more gravity to it, where people can just kind of get plopped in the top, and then you nurture them a little bit, and then they come out the bottom and take the action that you want them to take, like to buy something. In the nonprofit world, there's this constant pressure that people have to overcome, this gravity that they're fighting against as they move up this engagement ladder to make a decision on whether or not to engage with your organization, and really establishing this idea of why people should give to your organization instead of to another organization that might have a similar goal, or not give at all. So there's kind of this extra there's this extra tension in there. So it's really cool to see that you guys have done some of that hard work establishing that values, vision, and mission, because I think that that's the foundation of that value proposition, which is that story that you can relate, that really convinces people why they should give to you today instead of giving to someone else or not at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, Stu, like on a personal note, like this is like what I read late at night when I can't go to sleep, is like, there's a real reckoning happening in the world of philanthropy right now. And it's very positive. And I think that the way in which organizations engage with their donors, and maybe even more importantly, donors engage with organizations, is going to continue to shift and change. And that needs to happen. And again, to me, that all goes back to relationships, right? Like, this is about building rapport with people. This is about telling a true, authentic story and building trust. And the problem with so much of our institutional funding is that it completely denies the trust relationship, right? When you are where, and I'm not saying nonprofits shouldn't have to prove or shouldn't have to demonstrate impact, but there's lots of ways to show impact. And who's defining what that impact is, right? Is it the donor, or is it the actual people on the ground living the work, right? And so, something that we're really excited about, and that we as an organization have thought about for a long time, but hence why the local leadership, the local revenue support, the local dynamic of what we do is so essential, because that is what's going to propel the work forward. And then, for us, you think about this just in our sector. I mean, there's a real valid ethical debate in the seed saving world, around the world, here in the Philippines, elsewhere, of the ethics of the commodification of something as regenerative as seeds.
Right.
And so those are conversations that we have in our partner communities, right? Like, we're excited to see more and more farmers growing seed and be able to potentially sell that seed. But if there is a real belief that seeds should not be commodified and seeds should actually be freely shared, then let's do that, because that's the long game, right? Like, a short-term sale may not actually lead to the long-term regenerative process that seed saving is meant to bring.
Right.
So, I think this is like not telling you a specific way that we do this, but I think it's sharing that these are the conversations that we're continuing to evolve and have. Because I think that that model of relying on the commodification of services, really takes away the dignity of the partners, of the work itself sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you keep coming back to this idea of relationships, because in our view, marketing is all just relationship building, and it's just all about creating a sense of comfort and trust, and building that trust over time, that encourages people to take an action, and whether that action is to call their congressperson, or donate, or volunteer, or do something else. It's all built on that trust that comes over time, and so I love that you're using that language. I think it's fantastic to hear that you've figured that out yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think some of that's just the nature of how we started and the work that we do. I mean, what brings humans together more than food, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in theory, right? Like that's the great connector. Even if you don't have an abundance of it, hopefully people are sitting down and sharing some sort of food. And so I think just by the pure nature of our mission, it's about relationships. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's great to see it tied back to that mission. It just makes it an easier conversation to have if it's baked into the whole ethos of the organization. Then it's just a natural conversation, and it feels legitimate and authentic, because it is.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, it's really great. I did just take a peek at your donation page, and I think that if you have access to that, there are a couple things that you could probably modify on that page just to make things run a little more smoothly. If you're interested, I can share a couple of ideas with you.
Sure, happy to. We're like I said, we're bringing on some new marketing comms people, and we're planning a kind of a website overhaul here in the next few months. So would love any suggestions.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, having a dedicated team, geared toward looking at this stuff every day and running A/B tests and things of that nature is, that's absolutely where I would recommend you go with this. So one of the things that I like about this page is that you've focused the action. So there's no way to actually like click off to go do anything else. You're using I guess Give.
Yeah, it's a site. Hopsy is the site that we use. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've stripped out all the navigation, which I think is important. You could probably go even further with that. There's some stuff in the footer that you could probably get rid of, to keep things focused. One of the things that's not here is continuing that value proposition conversation that we talked about a little while earlier. So probably worth exploring ways to have a little bit more messaging here that just reinforces the action that you're trying to get people to take. And that sounds a little counterproductive, because we've all been kind of hammered in the marketing world for the last however many years that you want to, reduce the number of clicks and reduce, any distractions at all. But one of the things that we found is that for a lot of organizations, just having a reinforcement of that value proposition on the donation page can be really super effective.
Yeah, for sure. And I think some of what you're probably getting at is that's great feedback for the main donation page. We do throughout the year some different annual like crowdfunding peer-to-peer campaigns, and those pages definitely have had, I think, a little bit more of that. But that's a good tip. And like I said, this website needs a bit of an overhaul. It's not even, I'm not even talking design. I'm talking just updating content,
right.
Making sure that it's really reflecting the evolution of where we're at now as an organization.
Yeah, I think, almost every website out there that's why I laugh about under construction is, you don't see under construction pages much anymore, but back in the day, that was sort of a thing that you would see all the time. And it's like, well, every web page is under construction. Like they should all be constantly, tweaked and massaged and monitored. And like I said, if you can do A/B testing on stuff, you'll get a better understanding of what's working and what resonates with people. And so, the fact that you have this in the back of your mind as something that's important to tackle, I think is just great.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yep. Again, we all like to think that we're all unicorns here in the nonprofit sector, and we're grateful to have been able to identify some new excitement and enthusiasm in the team. But we gotta temper expectations too. But we like to call ourselves seed unicorns.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So what are the motivations of your donors here in the States? What are they hoping to accomplish by engaging with you and helping you fulfill your mission through their donations?
I like the way that you phrased that question, and it makes me want to ask them all of that, which I feel like we do. I think the biggest motivation is that people feel inspired to want to support the people that are feeding the planet, right? Like it's, I think the center point that we connect people on is something very fundamental, which is our sustenance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that, our donors really connect with that. I think I'm very grateful that over the years, like so many of my friends and family have become part of the family as well. These are people that maybe not necessarily ever knew about the Philippines, but through those personal connections have grown to love the people and the work. And I think that there's another piece to our work that's really about justice, right? That's
Right.
really about, painting the picture of, hey, like what the multinational biochemical corporations are doing to the world is really destructive. And we're presenting a very authentic grassroots alternative, and people respond to that, right? So we have a lot of friends of mine in the network, so very values aligned people. We have a lot of other farmers, other seed savers, other people that do this work here domestically that are like, wow, I feel in solidarity with the farmers in the Philippines. So I think it's connecting on all those value points.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's great. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that you might want to ask those questions. I think that the more insight and knowledge that you can gather around people's motivations for engaging with your organization, the more you can have a good understanding of the kinds of materials that you might want to put out there to attract more of the same people, and the kinds of materials that you might want to put out there in order to escalate the engagement of those who are currently involved, and getting those demographics and psychographics can help you build, personas of kind of these ideal donors or ideal influencers or ideal even beneficiaries. So you have a great understanding of when someone shows up, whether or not they are, I'm going to use this kind of judgy term, but the quote unquote right person.
Sure.
So it helps with your ability to message to those groups. It helps with your ability to be able to make good decisions in terms of whether or not this is someone that you want to hop on immediately, mm-hmm. in terms of engaging, or if they might need a little bit more nurturing. Mm-hmm. And it just really helps. It helps streamline all of that. And at the end of the day, that ends up saving you time and money, mm-hmm. In terms of your outreach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Have you done any of those types of exercises in the past?
I think we have here and there. Like, we host a big annual event. It's a Filipino brunch.
Okay.
This last year it was virtual, which was actually great because more and more of our Philippine community could join from the Philippines. And, that's something we always ask, like, yeah. How did you hear about us? that sort of thing. But that event has really grown to like people look forward to it every year in our network here. And we've evolved to it being people can buy tables. So then those consistent guests always bring new friends each year, which is super exciting. And we were able to make the digital pivot, which was nice. It definitely didn't bring in as much revenue as we had hoped, but we feel it was a very successful event regardless.
Right.
You just for where we're at right now, you just don't raise as much money via a virtual event as you do in person. It's just
Sure.
kind of the mode that we're in. But it's a good question, Stu. And I think we're doing a lot of board development. We're doing a lot. Again, the groundswell of the work is really taking off on the ground, and I think that that's an even better question to ask people on the ground in the Philippines, right? Like, if we start getting new hits or like new partners saying, "Hey, like, we'd love to do Seed School," let's ask them, like, why do you want to engage with us? Like, what's
Right.
and I mean, that's something we do in our partnership development anyway, right? We always meet, we connect, we build those relationships, we learn if it's a good fit. But I think that that's a really an interesting way to think about engaging with donors as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think there are a couple things that I heard there that are interesting. And the first one is really going to the numbers in terms of your virtual event versus your in-person event. One of the things that tends to happen is people get very focused on the gross receipts,
right,
and lose a little bit of a track of the net receipts. And so even though your gross may be down from virtual events, the costs of running a virtual event can be astronomically less expensive.
No,
and so,
Stu, it was amazing, right? Like, I'm like reflecting back when I like sent in the board report and we talked about it. I mean, it was like, it's ridiculous how little money we spent for such an impactful, amazing gathering, right? So I don't know. I mean, I think that that's going to be interesting, at least in this part of the world, as we start to get back in person. I mean, there is something nice about being in person, and for our event, it's very tactile. It's a meal. You sit together, you conversate, but we were still able to build that positive energy virtually. And to your point, it costs such little money,
Sure.
So it's like, well, why not?
And the other thing that I think we've learned is that once you've run a couple of those virtual events, they become easier and easier to pull off. And
Totally.
so that's just something to keep in the back of your mind and be thoughtful about, because I think that there's an opportunity for us to get really excited about gross revenue when and lose track of margins and profit.
Absolutely.
Especially in the nonprofit space, I think that we have a tendency to not think of profits too much, because it's the anti of that is in our name, right?
Yeah, which has built a lot of bad cycles in our sector, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I think would be interesting, you've mentioned this big donor a couple of times, and trying to, in a non-intrusive way, tease out some of their motivations and some of the like I said, the demographics and psychographics around their decision making and who they are, and looking for people who are similar to that, so that you can get a better understanding, or have a little more targeted outreach in terms of even in the Philippines. Like, how could you find a couple people like that over there?
Yep.
Because if you can get to those motivations, and you can get to those, those thoughts and feelings and ideas, and figure out how to connect with more people like that, you might be able to get, more of those people signed on as big sponsors,
absolutely,
and big donors. And so really coming at it from that deconstructive kind of mindset, in terms of really trying to figure it out, and not just think, oh, well, this was just a fluke and it's not reproducible. I think that there's opportunity there to build on that momentum.
Absolutely. No, and we're really excited to be at that point. And I think again, to bring it back to the core of who we are and what we believe in, like seeds teach us to be regenerative like that, right? Like, and so I think that we've already seen that happen regardless of large donor or small donor, that like, it's become regenerative. Like someone hears, they tell their friend, and it continues to grow. So no, I love that. And I'm certainly very hopeful that this the security of having the partnership with this really generous donor is going to lead to more of people like her. And I think that the way to do that, though, is to be really strategic and to dig in and to do the work that you're talking about. And we're excited to be at that phase.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I love the idea of regenerative opportunities and using that language, even if it's just internally in, getting that mindset of this, you're storing seeds and you're reaping the rewards of that, and getting people to become, very engaged. That's kind of what we call the inspire phase of engagement, where essentially you're going back to the well and you're asking them for additional help. And that help doesn't have to be, financial. It can be, share your story as a donor, even share your story as somebody who's engaged in this, in this community. Spread the word, get more people engaged, and just leveraging that list and leveraging all of those people who over the years have chosen to engage with your organization, to get them to bring, 2 more people in.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's really, even if it's just asking them to share, share something with their network, that can be incredibly, fruitful.
Yep.
In the long run.
Exactly. Yep. And I think too, like it's wonderful to kind of be at the place where we can think about engagement points that aren't just asking for a donation, right? And I think that obviously we would gratefully accept any donations that people want to give, but I think we're at a place in our life cycle where there's a lot of different entry points. And I think that that's just the way any of these movements are, right? Like, here's the thing, like I was just having a conversation yesterday with a board member we're recruiting, and this particular person was like, I don't know, like, I don't grow seeds. Like, I get your mission. I'm Filipino. I care about it. Like, and I was like, hey, there's a lot of entry points to engage in this work. Like, you don't need to be an active gardener farmer to get this and to become an advocate, right? And so I think, one of our mentors from the Rocky Mountain Seed Alliance, Bill McDorman, he teaches seed teachers, and I'm one of his graduates. And, Bill always says, like, teach what you care about, right? So like Bill can get up and teach all about genetics and all the technical stuff. But like when I get up and talk about seeds, like I tell the stories of the farmers. I tell the stories of the injustices in our systems, right? Because that's what gets me excited. And so I think that that's a great way to think about how to keep donors engaged and excited, is asking them, why are you excited about this work? Great. Could you tell that story? Not in a, hey, give money, but in a, hey, I'm just inspired to share about this awesome work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we touched on that a little earlier in terms of just having a variety of different asks that don't always, so you're not always asking the same thing. It keeps people on their toes. It gives them something unique to pay attention to. I mean, if the button in your email is always donate now, pretty soon people stop seeing that button. I would argue that maybe you don't need a button in your email regardless, because that makes it feel impersonal and like a marketing piece. But certainly if all you're ever doing is asking for money, people will start to, that ask will start to be less visible. And so if you're always keeping them on their toes, like, well, what are they going to ask me for this week? And it's something interesting and new and fresh. And, like maybe the ask is to just go, plant a seed and see what happens. That might be an amazing thing to encourage people to do.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Or, go for a walk and look for the seeds that are all around, because they're everywhere, Once you start paying attention, they're there. You see them.
Yeah. It's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, I can't believe it's been an hour already. I've really super enjoyed my conversation with you today. I love having these chats with nonprofit leaders, and I'm really excited for where you guys are going. If people want to learn more about your organization, where should they go to get information about Global Seed Savers?
Yes. So as I said, we're kind of going to be revamping our website, but that is still a good portal. So feel free to go to globalseedsavers.org. That's a great space. And then same name on Facebook, Global Seed Savers, as well as on Instagram. That's where we're posting pictures and content and sharing articles about the work and why this movement's important.
Fantastic. And I love having these conversations, and I love talking about things, but I really want to inspire action. And so one of the questions that I ask all of my guests at the end of the show is, if you had to inspire people to take one action after listening to our show today, and it can be anything, everything from, like I said, plant a tree or go look for seeds. What would that action be for people to help motivate them to get out and do something?
Oh, yeah. That's a really beautiful question, and a lot of different answers are coming to my head. I would really encourage everyone to step away from their computer and walk outside and just be still outside and observe what you see. And you just might see some seeds or some new life sprouting up. And that's what this is all about, right? So yeah, step away from your desk, get outside and be still in nature. And that's gonna take you where you need to go.
I love it.
Yeah.
That sounds like something I'd like to go do right after we get done.
I'm with you, Stu. I'm going to head out for my annual walk every day. Yep.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being on the show today, Sherry. It was really wonderful speaking with you. And I encourage everyone to go to check out globalseedsavers.org. And I look forward to hearing more about how things are going.
Awesome. Well, thanks for all your tips and advice, and really enjoyed the conversation, Stu.
It's always my pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, there you have it. Another great episode of Relish This. Thanks for listening. If you would like to learn more about how to apply the audience engagement cycle to expand your organization's mission, there are two things you can do. Right now, you can go to missionuncomfortablebook.com to download a copy of my book. And while you're there, you can get your purpose-driven marketing score to see where you can unearth some gold for your organization. If you'd like to listen to back episodes of the show or sign up to be a guest, go to relishstudio.com/podcast. That's it for this week. I'll be back next week for another great episode of Relish This.